Martyism number 2. Okay, as we all know, Marty came from very humble beginnings. But even as he experienced great success in business and later on, he never changed who he was or the way he dressed or the type of restaurants that he liked to eat in. He loved his orange t-shirt, and actually he owned like 2 pair of nylon pants. My mom was washing clothes constantly because he refused to buy more pants. So anyway, and my mom would buy him pants and he wouldn't wear them. So sweatpants and his sandals and of course his one sock were Marty's standard attire for decades. And those of you who remember Marty from many years ago from the Gaylord Street days may have had business meetings in the bathroom with him when his business meeting was him in the bathtub. And if you wanted to have a meeting with him, you had to sit on the toilet seat and have your meeting. Nothing gross or crude about it. It just was what it was. So I'm sure there's some of you in this room who remember those days. Anyway, later on, Marty would say, when I was poor, I was a slob. Now that I'm rich, I'm just eccentric.
So now we're going to invite up a couple of gentlemen who knew Marty back in the day. We're going to start with our good friend Larry Meisel, followed by Warren Cohen, and lowball Lenny Greenberg.
I knew Marty when he was a slob. I didn't know him as well when he became rich, but we certainly knew him when he came to Denver, and when beating the odds also meant beating the spread, which is one line from one bookie, another line from another bookie, and trying to win in the middle. It so happened this relationship of ours and friendship started in the 70s, and it's been really unusual. During that time, he actually needed money. We happened to own a bank, and from time to time we made loans. I'm not saying Marty fit exactly into what we had in mind, but nevertheless, we agreed to provide some financing for one of his transactions that were always unique, special, and of course, we needed the loan documents signed. I don't know if he was used to signing loan documents in the way he presented himself, so I personally went over to his home office, and I pulled up in my car, and I had a suit and tie on, and I figured this is an important client, even though he's a little eccentric, and I knew his partner and his partner's father. That goes back into the 60s, those of you aren't sure. And so I come in, and it's a little eclectic, or dirty, or filthy. Maybe it was just eclectic, and it was just fine. But I wasn't quite prepared for it. So I said, I'm here for Marty to sign the loan documents. And, you know, I got a wave like upstairs. So I figured, okay, his office is upstairs. So I go upstairs, and I'm looking around. I said, Marty, Larry, come on in. And I kind of figure it looks like a bathroom coming in. I wasn't sure what the program was, but I was there to get some loan documents signed, and that's what a good banker does. So there's Marty, who at this stage of his life was full-bodied. Is that the right term? A full body. He filled the bathtub. I don't remember whether it was bubble bath or no bubble bath. I knew that was an issue. And there he was, smoking his cigar, reading the Wall Street Journal. The telephone was set right next to the tub. And I know he said, "I'm fine." And that was one of my great experiences to know Marty, and I knew him from the beginning of his career that turned out to be unbelievably financially successful, but it wasn't always that way. He and Neil worked really, really hard. They did everything they needed to do to be profitable, to have integrity, and to not get in trouble. Even though now and then, you know, things got on the edge because the gambling was confusing when you're making the spread and you're selling the line. Notice he wasn't taking bets. He was just kind of figuring out the line for others to participate, which is fine until the FBI came down the hall, but they were just checking, just to make sure everything was fine. Anyway, it's an honor to be here and to pay tribute to a wonderful human being and someone who has given so much to his family and everybody. Thank you, Andy, for the privilege of being here.
Thank you, Larry. And I just literally landed an hour ago, but I thought it was important, and I know many people here that have flown in for this special tribute and memorial to such a wonderful human being. But I'm Warren Cohen, and I was Neil Feinstein's partner before Marty became partners with Neil. And so Neil and I go back to 1971, which is maybe before many of your parents were even born, for some of those that are here. And we worked for a CPA firm in Denver. We left in 1975 to form our own firm, Feinstein Cohen. And it was very interesting. We moved out, we got our own offices, and our conference room, most conference rooms for a business are used for meetings. And I started over in a short period of time to meet all of Neil's associates, and our conference room was more like a gambling parlor. There were games going on all the time, and they had like an international flavor of gambling. They used to play a game called Chinese Pai Gow. They played a game called Fresh Chairman-Deffer. They played Arabic backgammon. So they were pretty much, across the board. And it wouldn't be unusual to find a group scouring over British and multinational sports betting or reviewing their winnings or losses from the previous day. So it was an interesting place to bring clients. But the best part of this for me was that Neil and Marty were making so much money gambling that Neil never had to take a draw in the business. So it was a pretty favorable setup that I had. So Neil and I belonged to a golf country club, Green Gables in Denver. And Marty decides to join. So I call Marty up and I said, hey, I understand you're a member. I saw you got posted. And I said, let's go play golf. And Marty says, no, I don't play golf. And I said, well, so this is a golf country club. Why did you join? He said, oh, I joined because of the card game. I heard it was really lucrative. And sure enough, for those who are here, and I see many of you who are members of Green Gables, will remember the days when Neil and Marty would play that game at night, and the older gentlemen who had their fortune, I guess they just loved the company of Neil and Marty because they kept coming back again and again to lose money to them. But the two of them, Neil and Marty, had a very special relationship. So I wouldn't know if I would characterize it as Mutt and Jeff or the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid back then. As I mentioned, Neil and I were a long time. I have another cute story along the lines of what Larry told. So Neil and I, as CPAs, one day we have lunch with Marty. He says, I'm getting audited by the IRS. And we said, well, geez, we should help you out. And he said, no, I'll have it taken care of. So a few weeks go by. Marty comes over to the office. I said to him, how did that audit go? And he said, well, it went pretty well. I said, well, so tell me about it. What did you do? He said, well, I like to, in the morning I get up, I get my Wall Street Journal, I get a cup of coffee, I get a cigar, and I sit in the bathtub. So I got several boxes, and I found a bunch of receipts and papers, and I stacked them in these boxes. And I arranged, for the guy to come at 9 o'clock in the morning. And so the guy comes, and he comes in, I left the door open, and he comes into the house. He said, Marty, Mr. Chernoff. And I, usher him up, and he came into the bathroom, and I was there, and I said, how can I help you? The boxes are in the next room. And Marty said it must have been the quickest audit ever, the quickest IRS audit ever. And about 2 months later, he got a letter in the mail from the IRS and said, tax return has been accepted as filed. No changes. So anyway, the next time any of our friends got audited, we tried to get Marty to handle the audit for us. But Neil and Marty were classic entrepreneurs, investing in everything from coal mines to nightclubs. I once asked Marty if they had a clear strategy, and he said, it doesn't matter if it's straight or gay, it doesn't matter if it's black, brown, or white, as long as it results in green. And that was their purpose. Rolling forward a few decades, my wife and I had a home in Los Angeles, and we had Andy Feinstein over for dinner. And he told me that he was thinking about moving back to Denver and going to work for his dad and for Marty. And I thought to myself, how cool would it be for Neil and Marty to have him in Denver as succession to their business? And as it turns out, it was more than that. He has become an influential member of the community, doing great things, and he's gone beyond custodialship of Chernoff Feinstein Holdings and has been instrumental in building it into the empire it is today. Many of us have witnessed the relationship between Marty and Andy and can feel Marty looking down on us here today, knowing that things are in good hands and there's a bright future for what Marty and it had begun. Anyway, thank you all for coming here and sharing these stories.
Thank you very much. By the way, it's a small world. I'm in a deal of his, and I never met him before. And there he was sitting next to me, a pot deal. So there you go. Lisa, Kay, Linda, Andy, Neil, Grace, Sarah, Governor and the mayors. My name is Lenny Greenberg, and Marty nicknamed me Lowball. Into the mic. Lowball Lenny. I'll get to that in a minute. I was introduced to Marty about 25 years ago through a mutual friend who said, I know a guy who has a nightclub who's buying property in Southeast, and you might be interested in meeting him. So I called Marty. We decided to meet at a place in Silver Spring, Maryland called the Silver Diner. I go in, there's nobody there except this guy who is wedged into a table with his computer open, and I'm looking around, and I go, Mr. Chernoff? Mr. Chernoff? He goes, yes. I said, I'm Lenny Greenberg. He said, oh, well, I'm Marty. Have a seat. Well, that sit down lasted 2 to 3 hours. We discussed our backgrounds, both of us coming from fairly humble beginnings, and our business philosophies. And this mutual acquaintance turned into a mutual admiration society of our accomplishments. Marty figured out early on that you could do good and well at the same time. Marty's a family man, a rocket scientist, electrical engineer, a business entrepreneur extraordinaire, and a real estate visionary that's unbelievable. He actually, and I'll get to the lowball Lenny here, he calls me, it's about a piece of property in that place that Lisa was talking about that she wouldn't go to. And I looked around, it was down by the capital of the United States. I said, well, how bad could this be? Well, it was in the times when the banks were trying to sell their properties. And Marty says, well, they want $1,650,000. And I said, well, okay, let's give it to them. They wouldn't sell it to us. A couple months go by, a couple weeks. He says, Lenny, they called me back. What should we do? Offer him $650,000. So he calls me back. I said, I'll try. He calls me back, and in his lilting voice, he goes, oh, Lenny, I screwed up. I got it for $850,000. And off to the races we were. It turned into quite a property, and the Nats field was plopped not too far away. So Marty would, years later, Marty would visit D.C. often with Kay and visit us in Florida. And together, we just enjoyed each other's company. We shared stories about our real estate accomplishments, our successes and failures, and our stock market successes and failures, and those seem to outnumber the real estate successes and failures. To meet Marty for a business meeting had to be scheduled around one of his favorite restaurants. And it usually had to be scheduled around either the first breakfast, the second breakfast, or the third breakfast, which led into lunch, which soon dinner was being planned. 20 years ago, when my daughter was getting married, Marty made a surprise visit to my office. Coincidentally, my daughter's in-laws-to-be, who I'd only met once and very straight-laced, were also coming to my office. And there's Marty at my conference table, sitting there in all his sartorial splendor of a baby blue warm-up suit with a T-shirt, the bottom of which did not meet the top of the pants, and his sandals. Now, you got to picture this. So I'm going, well, this ought to be interesting. So I hear my future daughter's in-laws coming in the door, and Marty's sitting there, and they come through the threshold, and I said their names. I said, I want you to meet my partner, Marty Chernoff. So Marty immediately gets up, and while he's getting up, picture this, his pants fall down to his knees. It was a Hollywood moment extraordinaire. It was unbelievable. So I loved Marty. I loved his business acumen. And I'm sure that wherever he is today, if he's down where he shouldn't be, he's got the ice cube concession. If he's up where I think he is, he's scouting out new neighborhoods and figuring out how to get the party started, where the booze is flowing freely and the music is pounding loudly. So I just want to say thank you. I miss that guy. We had a ball, and we had a great relationship, and what he's done for this city, this area, is just exceptional. And thank you very much for letting me take your time and expressing that. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Farber, and this is my brother Brent, and I'm going to speak briefly on behalf of both of us. So, Kay, Lisa, and Linda, I'm honored on behalf of myself and my brother Brent to say a few words to celebrate the great life of Marty Chernoff. Marty was a true pioneer in every sense of the word. He was a pioneer in the LGBTQ rights movement and a pioneer in the revitalization of this former industrial neighborhood now called Rhino. Marty purchased this Expo block in 2000 and reopened tracks here in Rhino in 2003, including the Expo Event Center, which began this revitalization of this neighborhood. Without this, Rhino would not be what it is today. Although Marty has known my family for decades, Brent and I first really got to know him about 9 years ago when we started discussing their real estate holdings here in Rhino. After our first meeting here in Rhino, Brent and I can easily say that this was not an area we were ready to invest in. So we said to say that Marty has foresight is an understatement. We continued to have conversations with Marty and Andy about a partnership on one of their prized properties here in Rhino. We were not the only group looking at this site at this time. As we put forward our vision for the property, Marty believed in us and our plan. We agreed to terms and entered into our first partnership with Marty and Andy and built what is now known as the Hub right across the street from here. That successful partnership has now led us to being partners in over a half dozen projects all over downtown Denver. Every partnership is based on trust, and this partnership that we have had with Marty and Andy is a great example of what a partnership should be. Marty was a handshake type of guy, and this was always refreshing, as this is not the norm in today's world. We will miss you, Marty, and we will always take the lessons that we learned from you and continue to apply them in our everyday lives. Thank you for believing us.